And it is interesting. We left out of the introduction, which I said would be 30 minutes. This is one of the things that would be included is your new book, which you wrote with Mark, called Born to Walk. And you make some really interesting points there that I completely agree with. I think it's a wonderful resource, and I would love to deep dive with you into that conversation today. And part of that conversation is saying to a lot of people, less is more when it comes to health and fitness, and those crushing workouts, like you said, may not be as beneficial as possible. But can you tell us why the two of you decided to write the book, and especially landed on the title, which is pretty great, pretty kind of nice little yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
oh, look
Born
at
to
that. I
Walk.
happen to have a copy with me right here for those
There you
watching
go.
on video. Yeah. So the title is a takeoff on this wonderful 2009 bestseller titled Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. He did a great job. It still remains on the bestseller list 15 years later, which is so rare for a book. So it was a sensation, and it helped to catalyze the running boom, which of course has been going on for many decades. But it really got people tapping into this notion that humans have these amazing genetic attributes for endurance running. Unlike any other animal on the planet, we are the superior endurance creature on the planet if you put the race long enough. And there's a funny video on YouTube where they line up these different animals on the starting line. So you have the cheetah, the antelope, the bear, the giraffe, the endurance horse, the human. And of course, the cheetah kicks everyone's butt to 200 meters, but then the antelope takes over to a mile. But if you extend out to 100 miles, and we know this from the actual races, the Western States 100 is a foot race for humans, and they have the Tevis Cup for horses on the same course. The human can outlast any creature on Earth for extreme endurance endeavors. So you take this insight from evolutionary biology and you run with it today to help catalyze the running boom and sell more running shoes and gain more entries into marathon events. And that's where this has been a long-term, disastrous, dismal failure for devoted running enthusiasts to go out there, lace up elevated cushioned shoes, and run in the name of health, longevity, and achieving an amazing athletic feat. Now, I'm not against bucket list items and doing something that's really challenging and pushing your body. So the book is about doing it right and understanding that while humans might have amazing genetic attributes for endurance, it does not mean that we should lace up these shoes and take off down the sidewalk or the trail every day after day after day and put in long distances. And this never happened in the history of humanity. And even if you go back to evolutionary biology and our history as hunter-gatherers, we prevailed and got to the top of the food chain, not by outrunning a bunch of animals and taking them home as feast or bounty. We got there by outsmarting them and working in teamwork setting and confusing the animal and trapping them and setting a trap and sharpening our spears and outthinking the animal. And that's pretty obvious if you just go into on your next safari. Why don't you get out of your Jeep and take off and try to run down one of those wildebeests and kill it for dinner? It's not going to happen very well. So this endurance stuff has been glorified, misinterpreted, and misappropriated to think that we should be training for these ridiculous extreme events like a marathon. And again, if anyone's offended already early in the show, I'm an old-time endurance athlete. I lived and breathed running and triathlon for my younger years. I've done 50-mile endurance runs. I've done the Ironman. I've done, long distance bike rides and all these crazy endurance feats. But there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And unfortunately, for many people, the right way to be an endurance runner is to get extremely fit with full body functional fitness and musculoskeletal resiliency before you even contemplate anything beyond running a mile or two here and there, for example, before you go and play the pickup soccer game or whatever it is. So this idea that long distance running is good for the masses is a big problem. And there's a lot of reasons we can get into and talk about why. But the first indication is the rate of overuse injuries among regular runners is absolutely stunning and embarrassing. Yale University says 50% of regular runners get an overuse injury every year. Wake Forest says 73%. Research from Europe says 37%. So we're going to say around half of all runners are sidelined every year with Achilles tendonitis or shin splints or knee problems or a lower back tweak or whatever. And that's because of the pounding, the incorrect form that's facilitated by the use of the shoes, and a lack of baseline functional fitness that would allow one to run and benefit from it. Now, when I was a high school and college runner, I was a kid, I ran around, I was super fit, and so I jumped right into training and I thrived and I did well and it didn't break down my body. But to be able even to run a short distance, you got to be in really good shape and you have to run at a pace that's comfortable. And we can talk about fat max heart rate. I don't want to go without Casey getting a word in here, but we'll determine who should run and who shouldn't.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. We'll definitely be getting to that heart rate stuff. I've told you before on previous episodes that we've done, I've worked with metabolic carts and could validate anecdotally that the fat max heart rate, the formula or validating on like a VO2 max test is legit. It definitely adds up and makes a lot of sense for everything that I've seen with the data over the years. So we'll definitely be talking about that. In the book, you guys do a great job talking about the history of how we got here. And that history also includes something you've already mentioned, the marathon, which I think is fascinating. I was made aware of this a few years ago reading The Road to Sparta by Dean Karnazes, which
Oh, great
I
book.
know you
Yeah.
guys love. Yeah, fascinating book, which talks about like ultra marathoning. And everybody knows, first of all, what you just said about, running not being as good for you as you think. Like 100 people out of 100 people I would stop on the street would tell me I was nuts if I told them that. And then secondly, everybody seems to know the history of the marathon, yet the story is completely different than what most people think.
You want to tell it, man? I would love to hear it. I can tell it. It's just such a shocker,
Well, I mean, so the story is Phidippides. I have a
Pheidippides, yeah.
Phidippides. Yeah, yeah. Runs from the battle site where they had the battle back home to, is it Athens, which is a certain distance, and gets there and says it's at Nike, right?
Nike, Nike, Neni Kayam. It means rejoice we conquer. And then he dropped dead.
Drop dead
And
right there.
so his distance was from the city of Marathon and the legendary Battle of Marathon to Athens. So he ran, and this is a real person. Phidippides is a legendary Greek foot messenger. They call him Hemerodromus, and his job in the army was to relay messages and engage in strategy. The Hemerodromus had a huge advantage over a horse because they could go over hilly terrain faster and spread the message and get ready for battle. So he did this historic run from Marathon to Athens, around 26 miles, and then announced victory and dropped dead. This is the foundation for the modern day marathon race of 26 miles, which first came about in the reenactment of the modern Olympic Games in 1896. They said, hey, let's do a marathon to honor the great Greek messenger from ancient times, Phidippides. Okay, so it's 26 miles. It jumped into the Olympics and came in every Olympics since then. And then, of course, branched out into be this cultural phenomenon that it is today. 2024, the New York City Marathon had the all time record. I believe it was 54,000 finishers of one race. They all ran 26 miles. Okay, so here's the big problem that we're going to get to. The punchline and the fallout from it is that the famous run never happened. It was made up in an 1879 poem by Robert Browning, who took liberties with actual Greek history and just made this story up to create a fanciful poem that was referenced then to throw the marathon in the Olympic Games. So what really happened was this amazing athlete, Phidippides, ran 153 miles from Athens to Sparta to request the help of the Spartans in battle. He got there, he found out that they were on religious holiday. He had to turn around after a short break and run back to Athens and say, don't go to battle yet because we don't have help from the Spartans. They're on vacation. And so this guy ran 306 miles in 72 hours. And in Dean's book, what he did was recreate that initial route, that 153-mile race from Athens to Sparta. It's an organized event. And Dean was also cool because he decided to do it with ancient nutrition. So he had figs, wrapped up cheeses, and whatever.
Right.
I believe he used his modern running shoes, or he was going to use the sandals, and then he changed his mind. But anyway, this whole phenomenon that's the foundation for modern day competitive event is a falsehood. And so why is that important besides the cute story? We're setting an arbitrary distance and proclaiming it's the ultimate fitness achievement in the endurance community. I contend right now, if we just changed our minds and said, hey, look, a half marathon's a long freaking way to run too. Let's make that a marathon and just call it a marathon. It's 13 miles instead of 26. We'd all be better off. We could go out to brunch earlier in the day, including all the spectators that wait around for their runner to come in and raise their arms at the finish, because running 26.2 miles on pavement is completely antithetical to short-term and long-term human health. And this is not just an opinion from some guy on your podcast. It's validated by, they have research where the vast majority of runners who finish a marathon, if you immediately took them to the emergency room, they would present as having myocardial infarction. They would present as a heart attack patient if they took their blood values and looked at their liver enzymes and their cardiac enzymes and the fallout and the initial damage and destruction from pushing the body that hard and incurring that much impact trauma. And so immediately it's super bad for your body. Okay, that's the trade-off I'm going to make if I push myself really hard. But as we reference in the book in great length, those who engage in long-distance marathon training for years and decades have increased disease risk factors from someone who engages in fitness in a more sensible manner. There's a viral TED Talk on YouTube by Dr. James O'Keefe, one of the leaders of this excess endurance exercise hypothesis. The YouTube talk is titled Run for Your Life, but Not Too Far and at a Comfortable Pace. And he talks about this sweet spot, the inverted U-shaped curve, where a few hours a week of comfortably paced cardio gives you an A+ in terms of health benefits of being active and disease protection from the number one killer on planet Earth today, which is cardiovascular disease. So all you have to do is get off your butt and engage in a good amount of walking over the course of a week, short walks and long walks, all counting up together. Or if you like exercise and you want to get on the Stairmaster a couple days a week and go here, go there, go for a hike on the weekend, you're dialed. You got an A+. And then as you extend out beyond this sweet spot of optimal cardiovascular conditioning, that's when you bring in the risk factors for overuse injury and cardiac problems over the long term.